The film opens with Drew and his girlfriend, Hannah, cruising along a deserted road toward the estate that has belonged to Drew's family for generations. This night carries weight. His father, Charles Abernathy, a powerful billionaire, has just celebrated his 75th birthday. And after 2 long years of silence, he has summoned all of his children back home. Inside the mansion, we meet the rest of the family. There are the driven twin siblings, Meline and CJ, each running companies worth billions, and Cammy, the youngest, a bold and glamorous social media star. From the icy looks and forced grins, it's obvious this gathering isn't about affection but unresolved resentment. Miles, the head of security, guides them through the entrance. Oddly enough, the mansion feels deserted. Charles had given the entire staff the night off. He wanted this evening to include only himself and his children. When he welcomes them, he's caught off guard by Hannah's presence, since the invitation clearly specified family members only. But Hannah brushes it off with a smile, admitting she invited herself because she couldn't miss his milestone birthday, especially since she and Drew had arranged a special surprise. That's when Charles delivers shocking news. With unsettling calm, he declares that he will not make it through the night. According to him, someone intends to kill him before midnight. That's the reason he secured the mansion and sent everyone else away. Charles admits that on his path to success, he created dangerous enemies. He confesses to cutting corners and betraying people, and now those past actions are catching up with him. His request to his children is straightforward. Keep me alive tonight so I can see the sunrise. As if that wasn't enough, Charles reveals his will. It declares that if he remains alive until morning, his enormous wealth will be split evenly among his children. But if he dies before then, every single dollar will go to the Abernathy Foundation. The siblings sit in shock. None of them expected anything like this. Had their father finally lost touch with reality? Or was this some elaborate scheme to measure their devotion? Charles had made thorough arrangements. All the mansion's windows were fitted with bulletproof glass, and every door was locked tight. There was no way for anyone to enter or leave. Then he turns to Hannah and firmly instructs her to go. This matter concerns family only. But Hannah stands her ground. If there was even a tiny chance Charles was serious, she refused to stay on the sidelines. CJ and Meline remained unconvinced. To them, it felt like yet another theatrical display from their father. A final dramatic move to reunite the family before his passing. Hannah, however, wasn't dismissing it so quickly. Even a 1% possibility that someone was targeting him felt too serious to ignore. Drew and Cammy sided with her. They chose to search the mansion for anything unusual. The twins scoffed and headed off to their bedrooms, while Cammy made her way down to the wine cellar, where the family stored their expensive vintage collection. But instead of searching for anything unusual, she focused more on tasting the wine. At the same time, Drew brought Hannah into the antique chamber, a room where Charles displayed his collection of unusual relics. Back in the cellar, Cammy suddenly went still. A deep, unsettling growl rolled through the shadows. She sensed it clearly. Something, or someone, was staring at her. Terrified, she dashed toward the exit, but the door refused to open. On the other side, CJ chuckled, having locked her inside as a mean joke. What he failed to notice was a dark shape sliding along the wall behind her. Maybe Charles hadn't been imagining things after all. Upstairs, Drew and Hannah approached Charles. They demanded the truth about what was happening, but Charles simply gave the same response. You wouldn't accept it even if I explained. In another part of the house, CJ sat alone in the game room, trying to relax with a round of pool. Then his drink suddenly tipped over by itself, and he went stiff. Even more unsettling, the pool balls scattered across the table slowly shifted into a flawless arrangement. During all this, Cammy was recording videos on her phone, turning the creepy atmosphere into social media content. But while filming, she noticed a shadowy figure behind her on the screen. Her heart pounding, she turned quickly. Nothing was there. Trying to calm herself, she laughed and faced the camera again. That's when someone quietly approached from behind and pushed her straight into the swimming pool. Her phone slipped from her grip and dropped to the bottom as she fought to stay above water. Soon after, her body drifted up, motionless. Not long later, Meline entered the game room to join CJ, and rather than panic over the strange occurrences, she began calculating. She proposed using their father's apparent instability as an opportunity to seize control of the business, even mentioning another wealthy family who had pulled off a similar move. Meanwhile, Drew and Hannah ignored their scheming. They were concerned. Cammy had been missing for too long. They separated to look for her, and before long, their worst fears were confirmed. Her body was floating in the pool. The discovery stunned them all. CJ blamed himself, saying that as the oldest sibling, he should have protected her instead of focusing on power games. But Meline dismissed it as an unfortunate mishap. Still, her gaze slowly turned toward Hannah, who was the outsider among them. What if she and Drew had removed Cammy to claim a larger share of the fortune? Drew exploded at the accusation, countering by accusing the twins of secretly planning against the rest of them. The atmosphere grew heated. Arguments overlapped until Hannah interrupted with the one thought everyone feared. What if none of them were responsible? What if an outsider, or something else, was already inside the mansion? When they told Charles that Cammy was dead, he was devastated, yet he still refused to unlock his door. Instead, he cautioned them that the danger would intensify as midnight drew closer. Then he exposed the truth. The entity pursuing him was not a living person. Long ago, he had struck a bargain. That agreement had led to someone losing their life. Now that individual spirit had returned to settle the score. As if the situation wasn't disturbing enough, Charles revised his will right there in front of them. Cammy's $2 billion portion would now be given to Hannah for choosing to remain and support him. That announcement made the twins snap. To them, it felt completely staged. Enraged, CJ seized a firearm, secured Charles inside the library for protection, and stormed away in anger. At the same time, Drew and Hannah argued that they had to find this supposed ghost before another tragedy happened. CJ refused to agree. He was more certain than ever that Hannah was manipulating everyone. In the twins' eyes, she was forever an outsider, not deserving of their bloodline, their surname, or especially their wealth. While Drew and Hannah continued searching, they discovered that Cammy's body had disappeared. It had been pulled away by someone. Hannah panicked and attempted to flee, striking the windows, but the glass wouldn't shatter. Drew calmed her and said there was another exit through the antique room. Elsewhere, MacLeod sensed something supernatural in her bedroom and even thought she saw Cammy's figure. Later, she confided in CJ about a young man she once cared for whom Charles had refused to accept. Yet Charles never objected to Hannah, which convinced the twins that Drew and Hannah were taking their place. They joined forces and resolved to eliminate them. Back in the antique room, Drew and Hannah stood among Charles's statues, relics, and old paintings. Drew revealed that his mother had always warned that these cursed items would eventually bring disaster. To keep them hidden from the public, Charles had even installed a secret elevator to transport them inside. When Hannah stepped into that elevator, an unseen force crushed her until Drew yanked her free. Without warning, every statue shifted to stare directly at them. The power went out and objects fell all around. Amid the confusion, they briefly saw the spirit. Terrified, they rushed toward Charles's bedroom. They heard frantic pounding from the other side of the door. Seeing the vault standing open, they assumed their father had taken shelter inside. They hurried in after him and understood too late. It had been a setup. CJ slammed the heavy door and locked it from the outside. The vault was sealed tight and equipped with a ventilation system. Gradually, the air inside would disappear. CJ's intention was cold and straightforward. He planned for Drew and Hannah to slowly suffocate within that chamber. As the twins exhaled in relief, a knock suddenly echoed through the corridor, their father's familiar knock. But when they turned around, a dark silhouette followed behind them. MacLeod stepped forward to investigate and saw footprints forming on the floor, advancing toward her. Before she could move, an unseen grip tightened around her neck, lifting her off the ground and dragging her away. CJ stared in horror and ran after her. Soon after, he found MacLeod in her room facing Cammy's portrait, blood seeping from the painting's eyes. Then from the image emerged a sinister presence, a distorted version of Cammy herself. It attacked MacLeod. CJ pulled out his gun, but in his fear, he accidentally shot MacLeod instead. She fell to the floor without life as CJ cried out in disbelief. In desperation, he rushed to help her, but her body vanished before him. Now overwhelmed with fear, CJ understood he wasn't battling illusions. He was confronting the consequences of his own actions. Shaking, he sprinted to the vault and released Drew and Hannah, who were barely alive after nearly running out of air inside. They thanked him, not realizing he had been the one who locked them inside to begin with. Overcome with guilt, CJ told them to handle the rest of this horror while he chose to confront the entity alone, holding a gun with a single bullet remaining. But the spirit outsmarted him. Rather than facing CJ head-on, it shifted its focus to Drew and Hannah, chasing them and forcing them to flee. They rushed into a sealed room and then uncovered a secret space hidden inside it. Within that chamber were rows of dark artifacts, ancient ritual texts, and books describing summoning ceremonies. Hannah quickly understood what it all meant. Charles had made a pact with something far more evil than they had feared. At the same time, the entity trapped CJ and drove him up to the mansion's rooftop. Broken and hopeless, he jumped, but the spirit caught him before he hit the ground. Taking on MacLeod's appearance, it drained the remaining life from him. As the clock neared midnight, the demon's power increased, and it continued to pursue Drew and Hannah without mercy. They finally forced their way into Charles's bedroom, demanding the full truth. And this time, Charles confessed everything. Long ago, the Abernathy family had been wealthy and influential. But by the time his father was in charge, the fortune had vanished, destroyed by fraud and poor decisions. Desperate to escape poverty, Charles entered into a pact with a demon. That demon was Mammon, the embodiment of greed. In return for limitless riches, Mammon would take Charles's soul on the night of his 75th birthday. And now, the time for payment had arrived. At first, Charles had been content with his success. But after his wife passed away, a darker desire took hold. It was no longer about money, but about legacy. He wanted his name to live forever, remembered through history. So he made another agreement with the demon, offering his descendants in place of himself. That was the real reason he had called his children home. That was why the demon had been killing them one after another. This was never a family reunion. They had been brought there as sacrifices. Drew, who believed he understood his father better than anyone, felt completely shattered. Before he could even react, Charles drew his gun and shot his own son at close range. Drew fell immediately. Hannah's cry rang through the mansion, filled with pain and disbelief. She could not accept what had just happened. Charles said coldly, "I told you to leave, but you decided to stay." Then he aimed the weapon at her as well. Hannah ran, narrowly avoiding the bullet he fired. She stumbled outside, trembling, and noticed CJ's gun lying nearby. It had one final bullet. When Charles rushed toward her, she acted without hesitation. She pulled the trigger. The shot struck him, but midnight had already passed. The agreement was no longer valid. Gasping for air, Hannah faced him and through tears revealed something he never knew. She was pregnant with Drew's child. The Abernathy bloodline would survive after all. Drew had planned to share the news as a birthday surprise, but destiny turned it into heartbreak. With the contract broken, the demon arrived to claim its rightful payment. Charles's body twisted as the creature seized him, his screams echoing into the darkness. In the end, his hunger for more had destroyed him. By sunrise, the head of security came back and opened the doors. Hannah stepped out of that haunted mansion by herself. She entered the same car they had arrived in and softly told the driver, "Take me home." She had lost everything. Drew, the life she imagined with him, and the family she hoped to join were gone. The money, the estate, and the Abernathy legacy meant nothing to her. All she ever cared about was Drew. And that's where the story comes to a close. If this story moved you even a little, subscribe and stay with me. We've got many more unforgettable journeys ahead.